Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Starbright podcast. This is episode 12. Um, glad we're back again. We took a little break there for Thanksgiving. I think all of us were busy with family stuff, so it wasn't going to be possible for us to run an episode that week. So we're okay now, I think, and we'll figure out what's going to go on with the next episode. I think we're nearing Christmas time, right? So we might take another break. I don't know what day that
Are we
the next one
ever
would fall
okay
on.
though?
No, but that's a whole different conversation. Once again, well, actually, not once again. I'll thank Starlight for allowing us to use her Discord server. What was her Discord server? Unfortunately, Starlight has taken a step back from doing things off of Facebook. She's still very active on Facebook, and highly recommend giving her a follow on Facebook if you haven't already. She's a great community there. But she has stepped down from running Discord server, so is now just a generic, I guess, King server, but it is also home to the Starbright podcast, of course. So it's now essentially our server. I think Drow and I are the ones with perms right now, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and I don't think we're gonna rock the boat or do anything much with it, right? Other than I think we're doing pretty well. Server's doing pretty well, I think, right? Unless I'm
Um, I think the server's been doing pretty well, but I do want to add, I just messaged you in private chat too. Last I heard, Star is taking a step back from Facebook too, so she may not be around
oh
for a
no.
week or so. Yeah, I've heard that she's been under a lot of stress and just needed a little bit of a break.
Yeah, well, here's hoping everything improves for her. She's done a great job starting this community and running it up to now, and a great person. And yeah, hope to see her back again some point in the future.
Very much so.
If you would like to join the server, if you'd like to chat with us while we're live, or just generally during the weeks, that we're not here, Drow and Mouse and the new person who I'll introduce in a minute and everything, we're all here on the server, all hanging out generally. Yeah, just come chat and say hi. At our Discord, essentially, now is what it is now. So, with that being said, you might notice we have a new person with us today. If you're watching this on YouTube at some point in the future, welcome. We have a fourth member now, Kat. Hello, Kat.
Hey there. Yeah, I'm just starting up this week with y'all. I'm excited for it though. I'm fairly new to the kink community still myself. I don't really know, which this is a great episode for me, honestly, I think right now. I don't think I go under a term for a relationship dynamic just yet. So I'm excited to learn more about it as we talk throughout this episode.
Yeah, and, I think it's also fair to say that many people won't fit under any of the names of the dynamics we list, but it's all still valid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've talked enough about how I feel about fucking labels. Labels are good to give a generalization, but you don't have to fall under any of them to participate in them. It's just you don't have to identify as a brat to be bratty. It's just
exactly. And not to get us any closer to 50 Shades of Grey and that clusterfuck, but as I always say, in life, if you ever see anything besides shades of gray, you're doing it wrong. There's no such thing as either or. There's always a spectrum. And within BDSM, all the things that we discuss are within a spectrum. And it's important to remember that. You're not doing it wrong just because you're doing it differently. And that's okay for the most part, unless you're doing one of the really weird taboo things that we were talking about last time. Don't do those.
Yeah, there are other things in life that you can do wrong, but yeah, not this.
Yeah.
So yeah, and this is actually you'll notice she should be hopefully make a great replacement for Liv, since Liv was taking that same role of being the kind of new person, kind of was there to ask questions, didn't really know a lot, wasn't sure where she stood necessarily. So Kat, I hope you enjoy being here, and glad you can join us. And this is a good episode for it too. This episode 12, if I'm remembering correctly from our last episode, is all about relationship dynamics. So as Kat was mentioning, this is a great episode to kind of jump in on, because we're just talking about relationship dynamics in general and different kinds of them, what they mean, and that kind of thing. I will preface this with, you can probably hear it, I have been a little sick since Thanksgiving. If I cough and whatnot, I'm taking Mouse's place this week for being the sick one. So yeah,
I'm not doing all that great myself either, but you can take your turn whenever you want. I'm not going to stop you.
Well, that's me now. Don't worry, I'll spread it to Drow, make out, and give him a nice big tongue kiss, and then it'll be his
Ooh.
turn.
Yeah. I told you I'd
Spicy.
give you
Gonna
a
be the
forehead
cheese
kiss
touch
goodnight
all over.
tonight. So
We were just talking about how this whole episode was about their secret bromance, so it tracks.
yeah, it tracks.
Secret.
What's up, cutie?
That's true. It
See?
wasn't actually all that secret. I've been trying to get them to like actually admit they're in love with each other for the last several podcasts, and
We can't help
we're
it.
getting there. We're getting there.
Just need to clip in that bromance song from the early
Yeah.
2000s.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I do love hearing other millennial trash references. We are all millennial trash here, and I love it.
Do you know what I love about Drow? You know why I love Drow?
Why?
Is it the beard?
Right. No, he's a normal human being.
Damn.
That is not even close to the truth, and you know it.
10,000%.
Well, we all know that you're not either. Okay.
Excuse me.
Uh-huh.
What is that even?
You are the man who feels inadequate when it comes to monster fucking. I don't think there's any
Who
coming
the
back from that.
fuck wouldn't? Who the fuck would?
I don't think most people feel inadequacy when they see a tentacle, but like, if you do. Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry. These tentacle monsters that can just blow up their tentacles to any size they wish, to fill someone up. Yeah, who doesn't feel
Will's
that?
gonna be,
It's not every tentacle.
True. And let's put it this way. I think Will's next big funding will be to going for expandable penises.
Oh my god. Well, now that you've mentioned
Knew it. Knew it.
the true what a penis pump really should be, let's be honest.
Yeah. When you imagine a penis pump, that's what you would imagine. But no, it's just disappointment and sadness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what I love about Drow. He doesn't need those
point.
artificial solutions. He's all natural.
That's right.
It's beautiful.
That's right. Thank you. Appreciate.
So
now that I've officially derailed us.
Yeah. Well, only slightly. We can kind of get started, I guess. I mean, I guess let's start with the very basics. How would you define relationship dynamics, like as a term? Like, what exactly, if you strip that down to its bare essentials, what exactly would you say that is? And I kind of have. Well, here, okay, so I guess there would be two different ways of putting this. In one way of putting, the definition of relationship dynamics, there is no such thing as a relationship that does not have a dynamic, even if it's just a vanilla one, because you could just call them vanilla, right? Yes. There is no such thing as not having.
I would argue that even in vanilla relationships, there are different types of dynamics. I would argue that very strongly.
Yeah, you'd be right there.
But there definitely is.
I would actually go so far as to argue any relationship you have in life with anyone, family, friends, coworkers, there's dynamics to all of it. And there's different ways that you can categorize each. Your workplace relationships are going to differ depending on whether or not it's your supervisor, your coworker, a coworker you really don't like, that weird coworker who always eats fish. You're going to have different dynamics with all these people, but you still have some sort of dynamic with them.
If you want to take it to its extreme. I mean more in the context of like kink /
I would argue that we have to start large and then slowly detract it down to what we're getting to. And I would argue that if we acknowledge that any type of interaction or relationship you have with somebody is a dynamic, then we can actually really start to expand on how that translates into kink and other forms of relationships, especially sexual relationships. Because if you acknowledge that everything in your life is going to be a dynamic, just like if everything in your life is going to be about consent, then it gets easier to understand it at a smaller, more minute level.
I could get that. I could agree. But all right. Well, if you wanna go that large, then how would you go about it?
Well, as I always say, go big or go home, right? So apparently that's your policy too with the inflatable tentacles, according to that message you just sent. Anyway, with relationships of any type, you're going to have different dynamics with people. Your friendship with your best friend is going to be different than your relationship with your regular friends, people you see on occasion, people you only ever see at bars. It's all going to be different. Within a dynamic, especially vanilla relationships, There is still differences. Like one person's relationship is going to look very different from how somebody else's relationship look, even if they're purely vanilla and have no kinks whatsoever, which I'm going to be honest, I don't think anyone has zero kinks. I feel like everyone's got a little something, whether or not they talk about it or are ashamed by it. Everyone's got something they're into. It's a little bit weird. But that's another discussion. I would say like the biggest thing to remember is that the dynamic basically defines how two or more people behave in a setting where there is agreed upon relationship that is occurring. There's some sort of relationship you guys have agreed to have, and the dynamic is the definition of how that's going to play out for you guys.
I could agree with that, and I would argue that maybe maybe the way that you define the boundary of that is probably via expectations. You know, what is your expectation towards that relationship? And if it's more totally vanilla-ish, then then you have vanilla dynamic, you have vanilla relationship, whether that's just be friendship or something else. And if your expectation is for something different, and then most importantly, if you have discussed this with the other person and you have come to an agreement about what your dynamic is, if your expectation is for something that's not vanilla, then that's probably what you would then define as a sexual or / relationship dynamic, depending on what you were expecting it to be, what you do expect it to be, what you've agreed that it should be, and agreed what you are both committing to and being a part of, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes. I think the biggest part here is that it is a agreed upon set of boundaries and roles that each of you are going to be abiding by. And this is something that can be rediscussed and renegotiated at any point, but you have a dynamic, and that's pretty much what you've agreed to. That is the set of boundaries that you guys have agreed to within this particular situation. And dynamics can be very, very short term. They could be just for one, scene, or it could be something would be similar to what we would call a relationship or dating situation for a vanilla person. But we don't always, in the BDSM community, talk about things in terms of relationships. We often refer to them as dynamics because it can be very, very different from what you would expect in a traditional relationship.
It also doesn't even necessarily have to be, an actual sexual relationship too. That's the thing. You can have doms and subs that have no relationship with each other outside of that dynamic whatsoever, and they might not even engage in any kind of thing sexual. They might not engage in anything that you would consider a proper relationship because that's just not what they're there for. And
sometimes
it's the same
they're
thing,
just in it for the impact. Sometimes they're just in it for the caregiving. And that is perfectly valid. There does not have to be any type of sexual relationship in order for there to be a dynamic. There are plenty of very, very happy, successful asexual relationships where they have never had or talked about sexual contact. And those are all perfectly valid ways to have dynamics.
Like Drow and I, we haven't had sex just yet, but we've done everything up to that.
The key word is yet.
Yeah.
We touched tips, but that's really it.
Don't tell them about our docking. That's private.
We're not here to judge. I'm not here to kink shame. You guys can do whatever the hell you want as long as it's not vor.
Thank you, Mouse.
I want to see the vor.
Thank you, Mouse. I appreciate your validation.
Always. I'm just here to support true love when I see it.
And the thing is, like even and dynamics are or can be very temporary too. That's the other thing. That's the other thing that I think makes it an important distinction between something that's more of an official relationship is not only can dynamics themselves be temporary. Maybe I only meet a person, then I dom them at like an event or something, and then it's the only time I'll ever see them. But
it can be a one night thing.
Yeah,
1 hour thing.
Or they can change. Maybe one day I'm this person's dom. Maybe they've decided they don't want to be dommed by me anymore, and they'd rather have me as a caregiver. And then all of a sudden, that's now a change to dynamics. So
many times in this community, we see things like they started out as a caregiver little situation, and then they expanded into a dom sub relationship where there was less of a little component or more of a little component. You see that all the time. People's relationships and dynamics will evolve. There's people who met up for a one-time scene that decided they wanted to give a dynamic a try, and the dynamic, once they actually started to get to know each other, changed drastically. Or you could have somebody who finds out that they thought they were a sub, but within this dynamic, they discovered that they had more switch potential than they originally thought. And suddenly this whole thing changes to where there's two switches who are switching back and forth on who's going to be the dom and who's going to be the sub. And these are things that really don't have a good allegory within vanilla relationships, which is why it's so different for us and why it can be so confusing when you get into a BDSM dynamic to know what we mean when we say dynamic. Because it's a very, very moving and fluid situation that occurs, and it's different for every single partnership. In fact, when we say dynamic, we could be referring to a dynamic involving like 5 people. It's not as common that be the case, but it does happen. So dynamic doesn't even necessarily mean it's between 2 people. We could be talking to a very, very large group of people who are all in the same dynamic because they've all agreed to the same set of boundaries. And it's just very, very different within BDSM when we start talking about dynamics, because we are, as with everything we do, we complicate things to the nth degree every time, because that's just what we do. That's why we have things like contracts to help define a dynamic, because sometimes that's essential.
Yeah, especially the more I don't want to say touchy, maybe that's not the right word, but the more stern your boundaries might be, and potentially the more convoluted they are. Yeah, the more important it is that you hash out those defined edges, just so that no one mistakenly crosses anything.
Exactly. Also, when it comes to something that's sensitive, such as swinging, there can be a lot of extreme boundaries there that wouldn't exist in other relationships, because when you're swinging, of course, you don't want to get into poly, but it can be dangerously close to poly if you don't have the correct boundaries set. And these things can be quite strict and quite different couple to couple. When we get into things like poly, the dynamics can switch drastically, because they may not want to know what each other are talking about or who else they're talking to or who else they're fucking, but they still have their own dynamic with its own very strict and very set in stone rules. And it can be very difficult to know from looking at the couple or the partnership to know what their dynamic actually looks like, because you may not be able to tell from the outside looking in. But that's something that they themselves have agreed to, and you have to respect it.
Yeah, and then and that's the whole thing, right? Like, maybe disregarding the super taboo stuff we've talked about. Generally, just because someone is in a dynamic that you don't agree with or you don't understand, just leave it alone. It's not your dynamic. And if it's something you don't agree with, then don't agree to be in that dynamic with them or with anyone else.
Yes.
But it's we're all gonna have our own little dynamics of our own, essentially, that are unique to us, and especially the more you explore and the more you find out about what you like and what you don't like, and what kind of relationship you want, what kind of relationship you don't want, and what kind of things you want to be involved in, and et cetera, the more you're going to come up with some flavor of dynamic that probably mixes together a whole bunch of labels, because labels are practically useless, and that is unique to exactly what you like and what you don't like, and what you want to be part of and what you want to stay away, and who you want to do those things with.
As I said, it's all on a spectrum. The entire BDSM community, all the kinks, all of the activities that we engage in, it all exists along the spectrum, and you are not invalid because you like to do things a little bit differently than the next dynamic does. A big thing also is we tend to have very, very sensitive, quote unquote, hobbies, as somebody once said. Whether or not kink is a hobby, and it kind of is if you squint. But we tend to get into some really, really sensitive things such as CNC and total power exchange. And within those dynamics, there are very, very strict boundaries that would be completely alien to people outside of the BDSM community. Even within the BDSM community, some of the boundaries that are set and some of the rules that exist are done to keep the 2 parties involved safe, 2 or more parties involved safe, I should specify there. But they may have some very, very strict boundaries that may seem borderline abusive to some people, but they have these rules to keep each other safe and to make the dynamic that they desired, that they wanted, that they both agreed to, safer. And we don't actually know what that looks like from the outside looking in. So we do have to bear in mind that just because you think something sounds scary or unsafe for you does not mean that it actually is. It's just something that you personally would not have agreed to.
And that's another really nice thing about the kink community too, is that a lot of people, because a large part of being involved in the kink community is, about education, so you can stay sane and safe and consensual. If you ever find, someone, whether it's a local group or something else, you meet someone who's like involved in something that you don't understand or you think is weird, ask them about it. If they don't want to talk about it, they'll tell you they don't want to talk about it. But, you find someone engaged in the lifestyle that is doing things that you just don't understand. Usually they'll be pretty happy to fucking explain it to you. Like I don't know that I've met anyone that was purely like, nope, sorry, don't want to talk about it ever, and just shut down completely. Normally, if I was ever like, no, I don't understand that, can you, like, what exactly, like, what are your boundaries there, like, how exactly does that work? They'll explain it to you, because generally people don't jump into that stuff, especially the harder stuff, as we've talked about. That is something you think about beforehand, you research beforehand, you learn about it, the safe and sane boundaries to set, and then you generally are able to communicate that, hopefully, to anyone else who has any interest in it and who wants to know, help pass along that information, help keep other people safe. And then that's generally how dynamics go, though. It's people doing their best to be safe and sane and consensual with having fun, generally.
Yes. And also, we don't kink shame here. If you don't agree with somebody's kink and you think it's gross, have you considered shutting the fuck up and minding your own business?
Yeah, exactly.
If it's not something that is completely taboo, it is not your business to decide if it's weird or problematic.
Yeah. Because I mean, especially within the kink scene, I don't, and I've met people who do that. I really don't understand that, and I never will. The whole thing is that all of this is atypical. I think I've defined it before. Is much of kink is stuff that would, in traditional circumstances, be downright traumatic. And the only reason it's not is because the level of control and whatnot that we have over it, and to be in the scene yourself and then judge other people in the scene for what they do. You're in the scene too. You're doing something too that's also atypical. How could you come along and judge anyone else for participating? It's just a different slice of that. But come on, come on now.
Going off that.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, going off all of that though, what would be like good ways of asking? Because we're talking about go ahead and ask, but ways to approach that topic. Because I know there's like time and place usually, type thing. Considering all those, I have a mutual friend who they have I don't know the personal details, but she wears a collar. And she's had it happen before. Somebody will recognize that in public and just walk right up to her, not knowing who they are or anything like that, but will just start asking about that. And that's something personal to her, so she doesn't personally like talking about it.
That's very fair. In the community, we like to play a game called Spot the Day Caller in public.
Yep.
And it's weird to go from spotting the day caller to then bothering the person who's wearing it. It's just as weird as bothering somebody with a wedding ring you've never talked to. Just stop being weird.
Yeah,
stop being weird. If you're, the only reason it would be okay to ask is if you were in a relationship with this person, not a relationship, but like you had a friendship or something wherein you had a rapport with a person that would permit you to ask somewhat personal questions.
Yeah,
I would say
it's no different than asking someone about their sexual.
Yeah. No different than talking or walking up to somebody on the street and asking about their disability. Like maybe they'll be willing to tell you, but you're still a jackass for asking. So like, even if they're willing to tell you, you're still kind of a jackass in that situation. So I personally answer when people ask me what my disability is, since I know that I don't look disabled. I'm happy to answer. But at the same time, I shouldn't have to, because nobody should be walking up to me to ask. So I would say, as a general rule of thumb, unless you have a rapport with somebody where it would be within the bounds of your friendship to ask, don't ask. It's not your business.
It's you should never spot a bruise on someone's knee and then walk up to them going, "Oh, so you like to suck dick, huh?" That's weird.
Yeah.
For a random person.
Yeah. If it's like your best friend, like, oh yeah,
that's different.
Who's that dick has you been sucking? Like, that's different than if you're just walking up to some random girl who happens to have bruises on her knees. Like, who does that? But then there are people who do.
That's like with my person, like I've been known to leave marks on her neck and stuff, and it'd be kind of weird if some random stranger goes, "Hey, so you like choke, a bunch of all this other stuff, and like it's just one of those things that's like it's just really weird, and you shouldn't just outright do it. Like, to random strangers, because that's just kind of that's not cool. But but like, I mean, if you're pretty close to the, like, I mean, if you're like really good friends, like, and if that's not a boundary, they don't mind, like, you know, not having with you, then that's cool. Like, I'm pretty open with a lot of my friends, especially to Mouse. I'm actually probably like more open with her than I am with a lot of people.
Yeah.
But like, in general, like, it's just you have to have that level of friendship if you're gonna want to act things like that.
Yes, I would argue a lot of people don't realize this. So I'm actually a pretty personal person. Like I seem like I'm very, very open. I'm not. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm open about, but I'm pretty guarded about certain things about me.
Same.
And a lot of people don't realize this when they first start talking to me. But after a while, they begin to pick up that there's things that I haven't said. And that's like that top tier or the next tier of friendship that you haven't gone to yet. That's why I haven't told you those things. And yeah, it's just weird when somebody who has, you know, just gotten into the entry level friendship zone starts asking me deeply personal things. I'm like, why the fuck would I tell you that? Like, did you really just ask me about my childhood trauma or why I have PTSD and I've known you for 5 minutes? Really? Fucking weirdos. But there are people who ask, like, people found out that I had PTSD recently. And the first thing some people who had known me for less than 5 minutes had asked was why I had PTSD. That's one of those things. You just don't fucking ask unless you're close enough. But people don't really have a good sense of boundaries. And this is one of those things, just like with BDSM, unless you're really, really close with a person and you think that your friendship level is high enough to ask, don't do that. Just like you wouldn't ask about a vanilla person's relationship. Oh, so like, what's up with this guy that you've been seeing? I've seen you with him a couple of times. You wouldn't ask a stranger that. It would be fucking weird. So why would you do that with BDSM either?
And even when you are close enough to that person that you feel comfortable enough asking, well, that anyone should feel comfortable enough asking, I should say, you know, think about what other people do in that situation, not just think about yourself there. If the person doesn't want to talk about it, even if they're your best friend, don't make them talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. You know, leave it alone. It's fine.
Mm-hmm. Boundaries are boundaries and they shouldn't be crossed. Consent is consent. Boundaries are boundaries. There really shouldn't be any further discussion necessary but that.
Yeah. Amen.
Speaking of boundaries, my cat might yell at me. Oh no, there's no yelling. The cat, no mind. I thought she was about to yell at me and tell her not to pick her up.
I was gonna say, take a page out of Mouse's. Don't be afraid to open your mouth, but be careful guarding your heart.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
most people
part
know
of our
I'm pretty much an open book with most things. But if you get to know me, you realize there are things that I don't necessarily talk about with everybody. Drow and Will recently learned some stuff about me over the last like month that I just hadn't mentioned because like, yeah, I hadn't mentioned to anybody else.
We weren't on that level of friendship yet.
Yeah,
well, you that either.
You open up Mouse's book expecting George R. Martin, and instead it's House of Leaves. And if you got that reference, I'm very happy.
I did get that reference. I'm glad you made it.
Yeah, that was good. But no, I feel like people tend to have an unfair expectation with if you don't understand something, it's fair to ask. And in some cases, that's really fair. But in other cases, was it your fucking business to ask, though? And the answer for a lot of these is going to be no. We have a culture where we think that it's always our business to ask and everyone has the right to ask. And yeah, you have the right to ask, but you also have the right to do a lot of weird, stupid shit. That doesn't mean that you should do it.
And especially if your interest is in actually like learning and wanting to just know the generalness about a certain thing and not, you know, stick your nose in that person's business, be very upfront and honest about that, because that's going to make someone a lot more likely to talk about it. Be like, I noticed you wear a collar. You know, I think, you know, you might be into XYZ. Could you tell me about how to practice that safely? You know, don't ask about their own personal particular circumstances, you know, necessarily, you know, allow
questions about being weird.
Exactly.
I would say if somebody were to walk up to somebody wearing a collar and go, hey, so I do have a question. You don't have to answer me if this is weird, but is that by chance a day collar? And if they give the affirmative and indicate they'd want to ask or say, I would rather not talk about it, you can take your cues from that. And some people will be willing to talk about it, but at least you've given them the option to say yes or no, which is important. That's giving consent or rejecting consent. And I think that, having that option instead of just asking outright, like, oh, so you're partnered, huh? Is a little bit nicer. I'm going to be a lot more kind to somebody who asks me what my disability is, like in a polite way, than if they walk up to me or like, there's no way you're disabled. And I do get that one a lot, actually. I don't look disabled.
I think a lot of people, they call them invisible disabilities. I think a lot of people with invisible disabilities get that a lot. I've seen so many videos of people with invisible disabilities park in handicapped spaces only to get like assaulted by fucking people for it. It's a really common problem.
You know what I look like? I don't look like a disabled woman, but I am. I've had handicap placards since I was 18 because I have issues with my lungs. I have issues with my immune system. I have issues with arthritis and all sorts of things, but I don't look like I do. So I'll be getting out of my car and walking away, and somebody will be like, oh, you should have saved that spot for somebody who's actually disabled. I'm like, well, which of my 13 individual specialists should I let know that I'm wrong and I'm not sick anymore? Like, what do you want me to do? Like, do you want to write a letter to my doctors to tell them that they're wrong because I look healthy? Like, what do you want me to do, buddy?
Look healthy sometimes.
Yeah, like, I mean, I don't always look healthy. Sometimes I do look like a little gremlin. I get so fucking pale sometimes, but people still assume that I look healthy. And if you know what I normally look like, you wouldn't think that I looked healthy like that. But some people think that when I'm white as a sheet that, I still look healthy. I've had people before, this is a real story that happened. I was outside of a Starbucks in a handicap parking spot, and I was tying my shoe before I got out of my car. And a lady walked past me, looked at me and said, oh, I do that all the time. And I was like, what, tie your shoe? And she said, oh, no, just park in handicap so I can run inside to get my coffee. And I just made dead eye contact and reached up and grabbed my placard and held it in front of me. And she ran away. And I was just like, the fuck was that?
Oh, that's...
Like, you tie your shoe? What? It was such an absurd conversation. The funny thing is, I ran into her several times after, and she just wouldn't make eye contact. If she saw me walk in, she would hustle her ass out of the store.
By the way, when you say you go super, super pale, all I can imagine is this mouse version of Samara from The Ring, with just your hair.
I do have very, very long dark hair, and it makes my skin look even paler. Like, I just the other day had a medical procedure, and I noticed that I was even more pale than usual. Unsurprisingly, you could see every fucking vein in my arm. Like, I was sitting there waiting for them to come in to place an IV, and I was like, I can see every vein in the palm of my hand, every vein on my arm, and I'm just like, how fucking pale can I get? How would you know I'm Arabic by looking at me when I'm this fucking pale? I see my Arabic ancestors by looking this fucking pale.
Well, that is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just one of those things. You can't judge a book by its cover. You're not going to know that I'm disabled. You're not going to know what somebody's dynamic is. And it's kind of fucking weird to ask unless you approach it really, really carefully.
Obliquely. Approach it very obliquely.
I feel like the safer places to ask would be like places like the server, where it is an kink area. It has specific areas for that, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And
I do have an area in my server that is the we call it the N classroom, and that's where we go to have people ask questions and get answers. And we do it in a place such as our server, where we can actually have other people looking and go, oh, hey, I don't think that was a good answer. I think that's kind of misleading. So I'm going to add this. And it helps keep us accountable for the answers that we are giving. And I feel like that's a very big part, is you want to have accountability when you're teaching people things.
Yeah, and I was going to say any big like local events and spaces is good for that too, because people are there for that, so they're kind of outing themselves as being involved in lifestyle just by being there. And
your local munch would also be a good place.
Yeah.
Just, if you feel like you're maybe in a weird spot, maybe that munch isn't a good place for you, maybe don't take the advice from there either. Because if you're getting a weird vibe, you're getting a weird vibe, and you should just not go to that one.
A lot of big events, they'll have panels, much like they would at any convention. They'll have panels, and they'll have classrooms and education things and stuff like that. And when it comes to accountability, which is a great thing to have, very much like the N classroom area on Mauser server, you're going to have a lot of people listening in, and people will give different opinions, and it's a lot easier to get better information and a broader spectrum of information, because quite often they'll have events like that. I just see them all the time pop up. I think FetLife is sometimes a good place to go just to look at, because there's local scene stuff a lot, and especially in more urban
FetLife
areas.
is also a great place to learn how to recognize red flags.
Yep.
Some of those pages are basically wearing their red flag like a Superman cloak.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, it's a really good place for shopping for the red flags that you didn't know existed before.
Yeah, no kidding. So I mean,
It
and
is
then
a whole thing.
I was assuming this was probably going to be a 2-part episode because this is such a big fucking topic. So we're already halfway through. We haven't even really talked about any kind of dynamic specifically, just about dynamics in general. So yeah, so we'll probably split this into two episodes, I would say.
I was thinking we should anyway too.
Yeah, well, I mean, well, where do you want to go to here? Do you want to go from here rather? Do you want to talk about, a specific dynamics, some labels, throw some labels out there, even though I'm not a big fan of that. If if you think that would be good.
I think we can start doing labels next week, and we can just talk more about like what a dynamic should look like and how to do so safely, and see if we haven't had somebody here to ask questions from a newbie's perspective in a bit. And I think it would be pretty beneficial to have Kat ask some questions and see if there's anything else we can answer.
Well, that's a very good point. Is there anything, you have any questions so far? Anything you've heard that you understand or you want expounded upon, Kat?
See, now when you say this, my mind goes blank.
Yeah, I put her on the spot a little bit there. It was a little unfair.
Every single time. I think
my brain goes blank too.
kind of building up a bit more on the servers things. I think it's also a good way to see, because if you're new like me, a lot of the labels are those are the big focus points you see kind of everywhere. And even if you were to like look up this topic, and I kind of did that right before we started streaming too, just to see what popped up on Google to start. A lot of it will really start with talking about only those labels, Dom and sub and things like that. But if you just delve a little bit further than that, it talks more of how that is going to change, and that can be practice in your dynamic, however that dynamic is, in different ways. So I think the server, like especially this one, I've been using the resources and stuff, reading through those. You get to see how people use those labels, but also kind of practice their dynamics differently between each other.
I would be very careful about some of the online resources too, because I find a lot of them are very different from what I would actually expect to hear at, say, a convention or a panel. Because I feel like a lot of the things that are written about for these like single website sources and references, a lot of it is written by somebody with their specific opinion on what things should look like, what things do look like. And I actually find that more often than not, I see red flags in a lot of the online sources I've come across. Specifically about bratting. I find that there's a lot of like misinformation about bratting out there that I think is harmful, such as bratting can include like put downs and bullying and things like that. Things that I think, are not bratting. I think they're just bullying and need to be excised from the community as much as possible. But I have seen a greater than I would be comfortable with number of resources out there promoting that as part of bratting. So my big thing with servers and online communities is you get a chance to not only ask these questions, but you can also see it in action between other pages, or such as on Facebook, other pages, other community members. You can see what that can look like in practice. And I find that that has been highly beneficial for myself as I was growing up as a baby brat in the BDSM community. I actually found that being around other dynamics helped me understand more of how it should work. Because you don't just enter the scene and automatically know what's going on. Like, you have to learn, and what you're around will definitely help shape your understanding and your behavior. Some of the resources I've seen online I found pretty problematic. Not going to name any names, but I think Drow will probably know at least some of who I mean. There's some pages on Facebook that claim to be educational sources that have major issues with consent, where I have had experiences with them where they did not agree that no was no, but so was anything but an enthusiastic yes, and that silence was implied consent. And that was horrifying to me as they identify and market themselves as a BDSM educational source.
Yep.
So I would argue that communities are very important because that's where you can get this information. You're not going to know who's necessarily safe to listen to unless you're in a community that can help give you the toolkit to navigate things.
Right,
Yeah,
and that's why some of us.
Mm-hmm.
That's why some of us have, our respective servers, specifically to, also educate and keep people safe at the same time, because
I feel like it's hard to install the toolkit if you're just reading things online to understand how to recognize things that are problematic. It's hard to explain these things and give examples just online. Whereas in a community setting, in a voice chat, in a Discord server or something, you can actually see these things happen, talk about these things, and have educational opportunities about these things in ways that you really can't do on a web page or even on like a Facebook admin page. Like I run a kink page, so does Drow. There's only so much education you can do through that without having a verbal rapport with individuals. And I feel like for me, Discord has been very beneficial to help explain what to look out for.
It's also great to be around these communities and these groups as well, because when those red flags do inevitably, affect those people and come to the surface, those people that have them and those issues, it's a great way to, spot that and be like, oh, okay, well, here's what they were doing wrong. Here's what was wrong there. And now I know what not to do.
Yes. For instance, bratting. I find that there is a lot of misinformation about bratting, as I've said. One of the things that I find very, very beneficial is that in a community such as mine, where we have, a brat-centric server, we can help other brats police their own behavior and make sure they're not doing anything harmful, because you will get negative backlash from other brats. Like, hey, that was kind of fucked up. Why would you say that? Like, no, we're not here to put down doms. We're not here to be mean to them. We'll make generalizations, we'll joke, and we'll be, playful, but you shouldn't be outright insulting people. Like, if somebody's actually leaving the situation, the conversation they just had with you hurt, you're not bratting, you're being a bitch. And this has been, the Brat Union specific, I have found to be a great toolkit to help stop or, identify and try to correct problematic behaviors within brats. And, it's easy to go into a community like Facebook, see how other brats are acting and misconstrue that as just being mean. And that's not what we're about. And I feel like it's hard to actually get a good feel for that until you've been around people who have experience with bratting and who have experience with these dynamics. And you can see how it plays out and what the limits are. Because we will also explain to you what the limits are. Like, notice how when we're doing back and forth, we're not actually being mean to each other. We're not actually pushing the boundaries. We know what's okay within this dynamic, within this friendship that we have, and we're not going further than that, because further than that is breaking consent and it's causing harm, neither of which are things that we want to do. This should be enjoyable for all parties. We shouldn't just be bullying people. And it's kind of something that's difficult to pick up unless you're actually seeing it play out between two parties who have the correct boundaries and know what they're doing. And that's why I find these online communities so highly beneficial.
And it's entirely a different thing if the person says they want to be bullied and they ask for it and they like it and they enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that's not really bullying at that point, because that's what they like. But yeah. No, you're absolutely.
You don't want to have actual put downs. Even when somebody says they like being bullied, you don't want to go for what you know is going to hurt.
Yeah, that's why the boundaries are always there.
Permanently.
Yes.
Permanently.
You discussed what is bullying and what's not for them.
Yes.
What counts for that.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the whole goal is for everyone to be happy. Everyone who's participated in whatever this is, they should leave happy and healthy and being full of joy that they participated in it, whatever the hell it is.
I do have an example of where we saw a great example of what not bratting was. In my server, before we had this new iteration of the server, we had what was called the Brat War. I was against the Brat War, and many of you, well, many listeners at least will remember, I was very against it. I didn't think it should happen, but the other co-admin I had at the time thought that it should. And I was busy. I had a New Year's Eve party or something to go to, so I wasn't free. And I got my phone blown the fuck up with people begging me to come in and stop it because some people were causing issues and people were leaving the server because there was somebody going around basically saying all switches were betraying brats and they were the problem and they were just as bad, if not worse than DOMs. And it caused a lot of hurt feelings. And they thought they were being funny. They thought they were bratting and did not understand when I had to call the whole thing to a halt and go, no, if you are causing harm, people are getting upset, people are leaving the server, you're not bratting, you're being a bitch. I need you to understand that there is no situation which you're causing this much harm and this much turmoil and pain to people that it's actually what bratting looks like. And it was a great educational tool, and I'm very upset that it happened. It shouldn't have happened. But it was a really good way for me to explain to other people like what non-bratting looks like. What does it look like when you're doing things wrong? And that was it. And it was something that actually happened in server that I could go back and actually explain to people like, you remember this when this happened? That's exactly what you don't want to do. If you're actually doing something that is causing harm or is genuinely offensive or problematic, you are not actually bratting. And I need people to understand that better. Yeah, and it was very beneficial.
That goes for everything. If you're breaking the boundaries of whatever dynamic you're in, you're not really engaging in that dynamic anymore. You're very particularly acting outside of it and very purposely acting outside.
Yes. You're deliberately causing harm in a behavior that was not agreed to within your dynamic. And that's not okay. Not at all.
And it never is in any dynamic, in any kind of boundary crossing. I mean, I think I gave that example before because I like to liken it to cooking, and that's you're not listening to what someone's allergic to, and you're giving them tomatoes when they're allergic to tomatoes. It's you're very specifically being harmful to them in a way that you know is going to be harmful, and you're doing it.
I would argue pretty strongly that one of the benefits to these types of communities is socialization. Because as we know, you can learn all sorts of things from books, but learning how to interact with humans is not one of those things. And until you've actually interacted with humans, you're not going to really know how to socialize. And the same is true within BDSM. You can have all of the book knowledge about BDSM you want, but until you actually observe how people behave within these dynamics and how these things actually play out and work when they're functional, you're not really going to know how to do it effectively or safely.
Yeah, and
that's why I feel like
your expectations would be bound to whatever books you were reading to. You can read all the 50 Shades of Grey you want. It's not going to prepare you for actual BDSM.
No.
and may I also add that while I agree with the whole socialization aspect, it's just very funny because my mind just brings that to pets and pet play, and I usually think, yes, socialize your puppy girls and your cat girls. Don't leave them all lonely. And cat boys and puppy boys, don't leave them all lonely. Make them have.
You're just making me think of orgies as play dates now, which is way funnier than I thought it would be.
I mean, it basically is.
I mean,
it basically is.
Puppy play dates.
Oh no, it would be worse than that.
I love
imagine if you will, brat play dates and what would happen.
That basically happened on my page the other day. It's okay.
Oh, I saw it. It was beautiful, and I fully supported every one of that.
Well,
I smiled the entire time.
You'd all save a lot of money
party.
Save a lot of money on the water bill. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, you'd all save a lot of money on your water bill.
All that money would go to buying Monster and coffee. What are you talking about?
Well,
not saving shit.
But your water bill can be so much more expensive with all those people there.
If they were drinking that water.
Yeah.
Well, we can all say there'd be plenty of moisture, just probably wouldn't be coming from taps.
It's it's your favorite type of lip gloss,
Oh gosh. I still can't believe that was the post.
I don't know if Kat. I don't know. I don't think Kat's aware of that. Mouse, you want to tell that how you got famous?
What actually caused my page to blow up was a meme that that I shared that was it was one that I reposted from another page from Instagram. I actually took it, and it was a meme that said the feminine urge to use pre-cum as lip gloss, and somehow that ended up with 50,000 interactions and 10,000 shares, and I went up 3,000 followers overnight, or 30,000 followers overnight, I should specify.
That's
Yeah, it was
great though.
Yes, and I was like, how is this the post that went viral? Of course, I became known as pre-cum lip gloss girl overnight.
Yep.
Oh,
What's great is like 90% of the recommendations Meta was giving were actually to random Filipino people who were like, why the fuck is Meta showing me this? And I was just like, I don't know, man. But like, Meta just felt like the Philippines really needed the good word of pre-cum lip
Apparently.
gloss.
they didn't know.
That's part
needed
of
to know.
Pope. It's part of
Yeah.
Pope Greg Horry's
Outreach program. Is
Yeah.
that part of your outreach program?
Yeah, it's part of
Drow was Pope Greg Horry in my server for a bit, and he's been going on outreach programs to make sure people hear the good word.
I was very much in the character during that
All right,
time
Trey.
too.
All right, Trey, I'll throw
And then
myself into missionary work with you. Let's unzip and go walk around the Philippines. There's dry lips to be.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that was
Let's go.
that was a whole image there. Jesus Christ. As I was about to say, we also had a wonderful name of Pope That Pussy.
Hey, wait a second. Don't say that was an image there. All right, we're solving beauty problems in the Philippines, Mouse. Huh? How about
Beauty? Was it beauty problems? Is that what it is?
dry lips is a beauty problem?
I mean, I guess it depends on where the lips are.
In either case.
Oh my gosh.
We always say that we're unhinged. Well, here you go, Kat. You're welcome.
Wait, Trey.
Oh no, she's really going off on the gifts in the chat. I'm actually loving it.
Wait, Trey. Can we get like big Pope hats except like shaped like vulvas?
Oof. Okay, no, that's the thing. I want to see somebody draw for me vulva Pope hats.
Yes, please.
Oh my god.
Where are my artists? I need somebody who's gonna draw me a vulva Pope. Oh, I bet you I could figure out how to make a meme about it.
Oh god.
Just take a clip of the podcast.
Oof. We could use it as our new logo.
Oh my god.
Goddamn right.
That'd be beautiful.
Do part of the neon lights with it somewhere?
Oh gosh, yeah, neon vulva. Why have we done a neon vulva yet?
Gonna go to an adult Halloween party.
I have a request. Will I have a request?
I second it.
Neon vulva. We need it.
Yeah. I'll see what I can. I'll put
Yes.
a little neon vulva Pope hats above Drow and I's avatars.
And make sure that you actually make the clit a different color so people can find it, because some people need help. Yeah. Ooh,
Well,
we could do
listen.
it in a Christmas theme. No, listen. We could do it in a Christmas theme and make it the Rudolph clit.
Oh my god. Now, what I was gonna say is I've been informed by Drow that much like the female orgasm, clits are just Western liberal media propaganda. So I don't know if I can color them different, but I'll try.
Do I need to reach out to Chaotic to make sure she's okay?
She knows. I know what that is. Actually, I've had pretty great experiences with that. So
I was gonna say, like, do I need to reach out to the sister to make sure she's okay? Because Jesus Christ, what are we doing here?
She's definitely okay. Her last visit to my place most definitely would let you know. I lost count. I lost count at 15. So
because this sounds like bragging. You know how I say, if somebody has to tell you, it probably isn't true.
it is true. You can ask her.
Mm-hmm.
It is true. You can ask my girlfriend. She went to a different school, but she'll tell.
Is she from Canada?
What?
They always are.
Yeah, they always are, right?
No,
I actually really do know her. She actually does exist. I know who she is.
She's from Ohio, unfortunately. Ohio is Ohio doesn't exist.
Is she?
Right
Is
now,
she?
Born
Is
hell.
she at least not from Toledo?
She's in the
She's-
Dayton area.
Ooh, narkin. But yeah, yeah, there's way too many of us from Ohio.
Wait. There's only one positive benefit to Ohio. Has she met Dave Chappelle?
Oh God, no.
he
We
lives
just
in
had a
Ohio.
conversation. We just talked about this recently, actually. A member of my server has.
That's the only positive thing in Ohio. There's a funny person that lives there.
I mean, I think I'm pretty fucking funny, but like, I guess Will doesn't.
Well,
Oh, that's right. I forgot Mouse is there too.
Yeah. Full cringe there, huh? Full cringe hours.
Full cringe. You know,
Full cringe hours.
your monster fucking enjoyment makes a lot more sense. You're in Ohio, of course you'd be into that. There's nothing else for you to live for. I understand.
My brother in Christ, you're the one who keeps talking about how jealous you are of tentacles. Like, I don't think you have
I'm not
any
the
leg
one
to
who
stand on
keeps
here.
bringing up the tentacles to begin with.
I literally brought it up just because I heard your visceral cringe as soon as I did. And then Drow helped me double down because he heard your cringe too. We decided it was too magical to pass up.
Yeah, see here. Now you're just bullying me. You're all just bullying me.
Of course I am. Have you met me?
So rude.
No, Will, you bullied us, so we're bullying you back. Quit gaslighting us.
When have I ever gaslit any of you?
Gaslit, huh? He can't even say gaslit, right?
It's gaslit. It's actually pronounced gaslit.
I'm fall for it.
Yeah, that's why he's using it as a loophole, because he absolutely has gaslit us. He just hasn't gaslit us.
No, it's literally called gaslight.
Hear this? He can't even call it gaslighting because he knows he's lying.
It's gaslighting.
He's been beat. He isn't accepting it though.
Not accepting his defeat. Too bad.
Listen,
so
sad.
I
know how words are pronounced. It's gaslighting. You can't make me think otherwise. I'm sorry.
Just like it's GIFs, huh?
Will almost had an aneurysm right there when you heard that. That's what that silence was.
No, I was trying to figure out what was wrong there. It was right. GIFs and gaslighting. It's both the same.
I can almost picture his eye twitching as I said it.
No.
People say make me think of it makes me think of the cornbread mix, the Jiffy cornbread mix.
You can't gaslight me into thinking GIFs is pronounced as any other way but GIF, okay?
GIF, huh?
It's GIF.
I think he's now admitting that he has a thing for peanut butter and monster fucking.
I think he's trying to also say that it's not Italy, it's Italy.
I don't know about that. Let's not take the joke too.
Is potato or oink?
Oof.
I grew up saying orange.
No, wait just a second. I might be a New Yorker, but our thing is coffee, okay? It's coffee. Coffee. CAWFE.
It sounds like that's the next generation of Pokemon that's coming out.
You're not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I'm done with this gaslighting. It is about to be 11 p.m. So I guess we're saying part 2, and we'll go over some labels and stuff next time.
Yeah.
Are we?
I do want to suggest that we I had another request for another topic for us to cover another time. I had somebody request that we talk about Dom and sub drop, and I thought we'd be able to do like a whole episode on Aftercare specifically.
That would be a really good one, actually.
I think that after we finish this series on relationships and dynamics, I think it would be a really good thing to talk about sub drop, Dom drop, and Aftercare specifically, and talk about how that can look.
We could throw that in for after the next episode. Are we doing one on the 22nd? Is my question.
Okay, let's do it on the 22nd.
I don't know because I am moving that weekend. I'm
Okay,
actually moving
You
in
like
with.
to move it.
I'm moving in with chaotic, so.
If the three of us will be free, we could still do it. Or do you guys want to take a week off for Christmas?
I mean, I don't mind doing it. I think I'll be free that night. I think, assuming nothing else comes up.
I would think I'll be free on the 22nd. The 23rd, I know I have a Christmas party to go to, but I think everything else I have open.
All right.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
22nd, I
moving,
should be open on. Way more open than New Year's.
I mean, if
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
able to pop in, but I'm not 100% sure.
all right. Well,
Okay.
we'll pencil it in for the 22nd, and then, well, New Year's, the week of New Year's, the 5th would be the episode after that for aftercare and drop. Is everyone good for that potentially as well? Then that's after New
Yeah,
Year's.
it could be good for that one.
Yep.
Okay.
That sounds good.
All right. So we'll schedule those two then. We'll put a pin in that, and I hope you guys all enjoyed watching and listening. Again, please come join us on the server if you'd like. Give us a like and subscribe. Go click on the socials linked below and whatnot. If you're watching this on YouTube, I have it on good authority now that if you just Google Starbright, I believe the podcast is like the first thing that comes up. And I guess I'll kind of spoil the surprise now. What I've been working on, not ready yet, but it will be since I'm hopefully gonna be better and not still sick. We will hopefully very soon be on Spotify and the Apple Store and probably iHeart Music app and anywhere else that you'd like to listen to podcasts and whatnot. So that
Ooh,
should be
very cool.
It's
Yeah,
actually
so,
A good Christmas gift for us.
yep. Assuming I can get that finished and I don't feel like shit for this coming week, but we'll see what happens.
Now, I'm glad to hear you could rally at least for the podcast. You do sound like you've been feeling pretty crappy.
It's
Yeah.
but
Damn.
yeah. So we'll call it here, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks. Have a good one.